General Hospital spoilers tease that a violent shock is quietly spreading through Port Charles as a secret hidden for decades is finally revealed. Henry "Hank" Dalton is not only a suspicious professor at PCU but also the long-lost secret son of Liesl and Caesar, two names that once instilled terror throughout the medical community and international espionage circles. Dalton's story is no longer just a theoretical suspicion or the wary watch of Anna and Jason. It has been confirmed by a series of DNA evidence, leaked classified files from WSB's old archives, and deep connections between a criminal past and a dangerous present. Dalton is the product of a dark alliance, a living symbol of the intersection between mutant genetics and the legacy of manufactured crime. What's even more shocking is the confirmation that WSB not only knew about this but also concealed it, even exploiting Dalton as a covert pawn in ultra-secret transnational operations. Dalton did not grow up in the arms of Liesl or Caesar. After being separated from his parents as an infant due to a failed genetic experiment sponsored by WSB, he was placed into a covert training system where nameless children were nurtured, trained, and transformed into tools. But Dalton did not just absorb knowledge as a scholar, he learned how to hide, manipulate, and develop technologies far beyond his time, especially in the fields of biological behavior control and personality reconstruction through gene programming. In recent years, Dalton returned to Port Charles under the guise of a professor and established his own research lab, where he not only continued his parents' unfinished work but also created new technological versions capable of controlling human minds locally, and potentially globally. Secret files Jason collected reveal that Dalton has developed a form of bio-nano implant technology that can merge with human neural cells, thereby reprogramming emotional responses and behaviors. Moreover, this technology is being traded covertly with unknown organizations through the criminal financial network of Jen Sidwell, the #1 enemy of the international security community. This turns Dalton from a subject of academic investigation into an international biological threat. WSB, instead of stopping Dalton early, chose to turn a blind eye because they once created him, used him, and now fear he might overturn the game. Jason, as the only one unbound by the system and past, must confront the truth. Dalton is not only a bearer of the genes of madmen but also the perfect embodiment of a technology capable of reshaping humanity if it falls into the wrong hands. Yet at the same time, Jason struggles with another, more painful truth. Jocelyn, the goddaughter he loves like family, is secretly carrying out a covert mission related to Dalton for WSB and has inadvertently come closer than anyone else to his dangerous experiments. Jason knows that one wrong step could make Jocelyn the next victim or worse, turn her into part of Dalton's ongoing behavioral control project. If this reaches Liesl, who sacrificed everything to atone for past horrors, the truth about her supposedly lost son will not only break her but could also trigger an irreparable chain of tragedies. Liesl never knew her son was still alive, and now Jason must make a painful decision. Reveal the truth to save the future or continue hiding it to avoid awakening the dangerous wrath of a mother who once crossed moral boundaries. Meanwhile, early signs of behavioral intervention are appearing in some PCU students Dalton has contacted, those who were once Jocelyn's friends and attended secret research discussions in his lab. They begin showing unusually violent behavior, loss of control, and emotional disorders. This forces Jason to accelerate his investigation and find evidence to expose Dalton before the next experiment is activated. But time is running out, and WSB, rather than supporting, actively obstructs Jason because they fear the truth about the monster they created will destroy the agency's entire reputation. Dalton's story is no longer just part of a biological research program, it is the spark for an ethical, scientific, and political crisis in Port Charles. At the heart of this storm, Jason must choose between loyalty to friends, truth about the past, and the mission to protect the future from the hand of the very sinful child left behind by Liesl and Caesar's dark history. A battle has begun, and only the truth can save the innocent from the nightmare technology waiting to rise. Dalton is not just an eccentric professor, a suspicious biological researcher, or the illegitimate son of Liesl and Caesar. He is the living symbol of a generation of mistakes that WSB's dark past unwittingly planted and is now rising with a thirst for revenge fueled by the death of Peter, the brother Dalton never met but whose hatred he carries as a bloody legacy. Dalton believes Peter was killed by those claiming to serve justice and sees Jason as the ultimate symbol of that system, a system that destroyed Faison's dream of world control. A system that claimed to protect humanity but buried the child they created in darkness. Dalton's revenge is no longer personal, it is a meticulously designed program. A punitive experiment model in which Jocelyn and Emma are key pawns. Dalton approaches Emma with feigned compassion, using scientific language that attracts the idealistic young intellect. He awakens in her the image of a world where people can be healed by technology, where emotional pain can be encoded and regulated by artificial brain waves. But beneath these academic discussions are countless biological microchips and neural cell tracking devices implanted while Emma believed she was participating in an innovative biomedical research program. Her data, fears, emotional responses, dreams, deep traumas, are extracted and synthesized into biological code. Dalton doesn't need Emma to be an accomplice. He needs her to be living proof that his technology can seize a pure soul and turn it into a tool serving a righteous mission of revenge. Meanwhile, Jocelyn, once trained to be an agent, is now caught between ideals and horrific truth. Her physical test results have been secretly accessed by Dalton through WSB's internet. And biological vulnerabilities in Jocelyn's nervous system are exploited to create a unique behavioral control algorithm just for her. When Jocelyn experiences unusual headaches, memory changes, and recurring dreams about Peter, whom she never met, Jason realizes she is being pulled into a behavioral control system deeper than imagined. Every decision Jocelyn makes seems no longer entirely hers but the product of programmed responses triggered by memories, sounds, smells, and even touch. Jason discovers all this after infiltrating one of Dalton's mobile data caches used to send reports to Sidwell. In the encrypted files, he finds videos recording Emma's emotional reactions to artificially induced psychological situations and brainwave charts of Jocelyn when exposed to data related to Peter. Every data line is clear evidence of a larger conspiracy, where Dalton wants to recreate Peter's spirit inside two innocent girls to bring the condemned criminal back in an undetectable form. When Anna hears Jason's account, she nearly collapses at the possibility her goddaughter is manipulated to become a tool serving Peter's death, the enemy who once turned her life upside down. But Anna also understands that if Jocelyn and Emma have been programmed, finding a way to remove it is urgent before Dalton activates the final trigger, a control command that could turn them into unconscious assassins or cause self-destruction if detected. Everything is happening too fast, too subtly, and Jason realizes this battle is no longer just about capturing a criminal but racing against time to save the minds and futures of two young girls. In despair, Jason faces personal memories of Peter, Caesar, and the bloody choices he once had to make to protect family. He recalls how he once pulled the trigger without hesitation, sacrificing his emotions to complete the mission. But this time, everything is different. He can't shoot Jocelyn or Emma if they lose control. He can't choose elimination without trying to save the remaining humanity in them. And that is the weakness Dalton targets, turning Jason into a passive observer. Forced to watch those he loves dragged into darkness he cannot stop. Dalton watches from afar like a playwright who wrote the ending. He doesn't need to kill anyone. He just needs his enemies to live in pain watching the next generation manipulated. And in this sick plan, Peter, the fallen brother, will live again through every act of Emma and Jocelyn. Every glance, every calculated gesture. It is not just revenge, it is a declaration that science can kill humanity, and love can be turned into a weapon. But Jason, though alone against the system, does not give up. He begins setting the final plan, to infiltrate Dalton's programmed brain itself, find a way to reverse the process, decode and eliminate the biological commands from within. Because to Jason, Emma and Jocelyn are not just victims, they are family. And he would rather die than let them become distorted shadows of Peter, the man he once ended to stop a cycle of crime. The battle has begun. And this time, the strongest is not the one with weapons but the one who dares to fight to protect the souls of loved ones, even if the whole world turns its back. Jason never imagined that amid the string of mysteries he was unraveling, amid countless biological conspiracies, mind control technologies, and manipulated memories, he would come face to face with one of the deepest fragments of his own memory, Britt. Her name was never mentioned in any report. Her face never appeared in any medical records, and her death was confirmed by forensic doctors months ago. Yet, in a sequence of encrypted files hidden in a secondary server attached to the neural control system Dalton used to monitor his test subjects, Jason discovered an unnamed file, just a string of numbers. When he opened it, he could barely breathe. The first image was a short video, a woman restrained on a cold metal bed, hooked up with numerous wires inserted into her temples and spine. Her face was pale, her body frail, and her eyes almost lifeless. But it was those eyes that froze Jason in place. It was Britt. She was alive. The shock sent Jason into full alert. Memories of Britt flooded back, the fleeting but profound moments they once shared, what he thought was lost forever on the night Britt died in the hands of a madman. But the truth was, Britt had never died. Dalton, in an act that surpassed every ethical boundary, had orchestrated a file swap, using a substitute body, fooling all forensic tests, and secretly transferring Britt to an underground research facility he built from Faison's dark legacy. Britt was placed in a medically induced coma, maintained by advanced experimental biological drugs, for a new study, simulating the emotions and personality of a living being to integrate into an artificial body. Dalton did not just want to create a machine, he wanted to create a new version of Britt, a semi-biological entity capable of regenerating memories, intelligence, emotions, but completely loyal to its creator. Worse, Dalton had deeply exploited Britt's emotional memories, specifically her connections to Jason, to understand the mechanics of love, empathy, and psychological trauma. Every movement she made in the comatose state was recorded and analyzed, every emotional response to auditory stimuli, Jason's voice, visual stimuli, old photos, and olfactory stimuli, her favorite perfume, was encoded into data strings. Jason no longer doubted it, Britt was being tortured in a way no physical torture could compare. She wasn't imprisoned just to be kept alive, but to dissect every fragment of her soul. With no other choice, Jason immediately shifted the entire campaign. He was no longer investigating Dalton due to his ties with Sidwell or the threat to Emma and Jocelyn. He now acted with only one goal: bring Britt back and eliminate Dalton. Jason meticulously executed the plan. He tracked auxiliary signal stations, pinpointed the location of the secret research center in the northern forests near Port Charles, a region that was once an old WSB base erased from maps. With support from Spinelli and some loyal underground contacts, Jason infiltrated the area without leaving a trace. Upon arrival, Jason faced a complex defense system, motion sensors, automatic guns hidden behind walls, biometric recognition systems. But he did not falter. Jason destroyed each defense layer like a cold storm. Every step forward sent a clear message. He was coming to bring Britt out of this hell. When he reached the final holding cell where Dalton kept Britt as a living specimen, the sight of the girl he loved restrained by machines made him falter for a few seconds. But Jason knew he couldn't be weak. He removed every syringe, cut every wire, lifted Britt off the lab bench, and swore never to let her fall into evil hands again. Dalton did not let Jason go easily. He appeared from behind with a biological weapon capable of causing cardiac arrest in seconds. His hands shaking but eyes still insane. The final confrontation began. Dalton accused Jason of destroying his family, killing Peter, and causing Faison to be forgotten. He claimed Britt was the ultimate symbol of the replicated self he created, and Jason had no right to take that away. But Jason needed no defense. He shot the central power system, causing a blackout, and charged at Dalton. In a brutal fight, Jason used everything he had, not just combat skills, but years of pent-up rage, pain, and the love he held for Britt. Eventually, Dalton fell under a fatal blow, not just from Jason, but from his own arrogance, believing technology could replace the human heart. Jason carried Britt out as the facility began collapsing. The night sky cast a faint glow on her face as she slowly awoke in his arms. She said nothing, but her eyes, the same eyes he once loved, spoke volumes. They survived. And this time, Jason would never let anyone, whether Faison's ghost or new WSB forces, take her away again. This was not just a rescue. It was a resurrection. And their story, from the ashes of the hell Dalton left behind, would begin anew, with faith, scars, and an undying love. Jason had finally pieced together the scattered fragments of the nightmare engulfing Port Charles when he discovered a shocking truth. Dalton was behind all the dangerous and abnormal behavior Drew had recently exhibited. The inconsistent decisions, sudden outbursts of rage, cruel actions during the custody trial, an irrational obsession with power were not the emergence of Drew's true nature but the product of an elaborate brainwashing process Dalton had implemented to turn Drew into a strategic pawn in his plan to destroy family, legal, and ethical structures in Port Charles. Jason, with his sharp instincts and unyielding battlefield memory, realized Drew's actions were not of his own free will. He reviewed medical records, movements, and unexplained gaps in Drew's schedule since returning from Germany. Secret meetings, encrypted emails, and sophisticated neural monitoring devices found in Drew's apartment confirmed Jason's worst suspicions. Drew was no longer himself but the latest product in Dalton's biological programming experiments, a man trying to dismantle friendship, loyalty, and family in Port Charles. Unable to stand by and watch a once ally, a brother in the darkest days, fall into enemy hands, Jason decided to act, not only to save Drew but to break the invisible chain of influence Dalton quietly wove throughout the city. Jason strategically approached Drew, creating opportunities to rekindle memories, emotional bonds, and deep past events only the two shared. Although Drew initially responded with suspicion and cold defensiveness, Jason persisted, knowing that if Drew slipped deeper into Dalton's neural control maze, there would be no escape. At the same time, Jason contacted Anna and Spinelli to trace the origin of the technology used in manipulating Drew. They discovered Dalton employed a high-frequency neural pulse implanted into sensitive memory regions, blurring the line between reality and illusion in the victim's mind. This explained why Drew believed he acted rationally while being manipulated by artificial emotions and pre-programmed false memories. This also explained why Drew, once principled and compassionate, now ruthlessly targeted Michael, Willow, and Carly, those he once vowed to protect. The battle to reclaim Drew was not merely dismantling a technical system. It was a painful emotional journey where Jason confronted his own past, where trust, betrayal, and the cost of brotherhood nearly cost him his soul. But this time, he would not allow it to happen again. At a crucial moment, when Drew was about to submit fabricated evidence against Carly in court, Jason appeared unexpectedly, facing the man he once called friend. He did not use force, shout, or coerce. He simply showed a photo, the picture they took with Scout when she first started walking. Drew's radiant face then starkly contrasting with his current cold eyes. That moment touched the deepest part of Drew, and marked the start of a fierce inner battle to break free from the programming shell. Jason not only saved Drew from Dalton's grasp but brought him back to himself, to family, to a part of humanity once strangled by false impulses. From that moment on, the fight against Dalton was no longer a solitary battle. Drew, now awakened, became a living witness, a warrior with first-hand experience of the nightmare. Together with Jason, Anna, and Carly, they formed an organized resistance to expose the entire psychological control network Dalton was expanding beyond Port Charles. The rescue of Drew was not only an emotional victory, it was the beginning of the strongest counterattack against the cruelest and smartest enemy they had ever faced. But Dalton, though wounded, was not easily defeated. He had Britt, he was targeting Jocelyn, and he knew Jason would never stop until everyone he loved was safe. And so, a new chain of disasters was about to ignite, but this time, Jason would not fight alone. Dalton was no longer simply a professor or a lone researcher hidden in the shadows. He had evolved into a new symbol of organized evil, protected by underground forces, funded by decayed power structures, and driven by a deep-seated hatred that only those imprisoned in darkness could truly understand. Dalton was not just the secret son of Liesel and Caesar. Not merely someone who once stood in Peter's shadow, he was the legitimate heir to a legacy of crime born from madness, control, and betrayal. Now, as he stepped into the heart of Port Charles wielding destructive neural technologies, secret biological experiments, and ambitions to manipulate the very emotions and behaviors of humanity, the entire city had fallen into a nightmare that no one could deny or ignore. Jason was the first to sense the danger. With the instincts of a warrior and the intuition of someone who had survived too long in a world where death lurked constantly, he noticed the unusual disappearances. The strange behavioral changes in Jocelyn, Emma's sudden silence, and the unexpected revival of data thought destroyed. He began investigating, and what he uncovered not only stunned him but made him realize this battle was not just about stopping an assassination or a mafia deal. It was about saving the soul of an entire generation. Dalton did not attack with guns or knives, he attacked by manipulating emotions, programming memories, and erasing identities. He turned young people like Jocelyn and Emma into experimental pawns, putting them in a half-conscious state, transforming them into links in a plan to build a society without free will, where humans were controlled like robots bearing emotional shells. All the data Dalton collected from these test subjects was fed into a biologically based AI system capable of recreating personalities, turning once living individuals into soulless copies. Jason realized he could not fight this insane war alone. He turned to Anna, a former comrade, a key figure in WSB, and someone who understood the terrible schemes the organization once concealed. Anna not only provided information on Dalton's experiments but also revealed deep regret for not stopping him sooner. They reunited, not as colleagues, but as two souls scarred, now drawing weapons together and charging into the final battlefield of truth. When Carly learned that Jocelyn had been targeted and even tracked using technology hidden in her belongings, she broke down completely. But as a mother, she refused to show weakness. She stepped into the front line, not just to protect her daughter, but to demand justice for Britt, for Jason, and for all those turned into tools by Dalton. She became the vital link between Jason and Sonny, the man who had once ruled the power center of Port Charles and now had to face the harsh reality that his influence was no longer enough to protect the city from an enemy that bore no traditional violent form. Sonny, forced to shed his mafia persona, entered a war without bullets but more brutal than any purge he had known. He and Jason, once opposing forces of good and evil, now stood side by side as two fathers, two men who had lost much, to stop a destruction that could steal what they had left, family, memories, and choice. They understood Dalton was not just a problem for WSB or the underworld, he was a cancer at the heart of Port Charles, and if not eradicated completely, everything would collapse. Dalton's advances grew bolder. He began spreading a digital brainwave capable of altering the neural synchronization of young people, making them highly suggestible and receptive to programmed behaviors. Attacks on personal data increased. Many PCU students began showing unexplained personality changes. Doctors at General Hospital reported emotional deterioration in patients with no prior psychiatric history. All signs pointed to a single source, Dalton. The coming battle was no longer a mission. It was a vow. Jason, Anna, Carly, and Sonny did not fight for fame, money, or power. They fought for humanity. For the beautiful memories of Port Charles that must not be erased. For the laughter of children that cannot be programmed, for the embrace of a loved one that cannot be replaced by a cold machine. Dalton may wield the power of technology, conspiracy, and a poisonous bloodline. But they had what he never would, loyalty, memories, and a love that transcended death. This confrontation would be the final battle, not just between light and darkness, but between true humanity and machines born from hatred. And whatever the outcome, Port Charles would never be the same. But if the soul of this city could be preserved, those who stand up today would become legends forever.